All right, let's jump right into it. Here we go. Have you ever had unmet expectations? Have you ever had unmet expectations? I would say 100% hopefully have, unless you're some superhuman perfect person, uh, because we all have them at some point. So I'm asking a rhetorical question here, but it's an important question because we may not be realizing how we're set up in that way uh, to have unmet expectations. Uh, Oftentimes that's focused on other people, but it also affects ourselves. And while I'm recording this podcast this week, it happens to be for if you're a Christian, it's considered Holy Week, and we're going into Easter. Um, and for those that don't know that story or the background, I want to just take a moment, and this is a very classic, kind of say classic story, but it is one in which there were a great many un, unmet expectations at the time. Um, for those of you that follow along and know this story, bear with me for a moment, but I think it's important. It's worthwhile to investigate or understand unmet expectations. In the case that I'm referring to, 2,000 plus years ago, uh, there's Jesus, this prophet, this person that's coming around doing all these things um, as a Jew, uh, and the Jewish people were oppressed. They were uh, had the Roman Empire upon them, and were looking for a king. We're looking for somebody to come and save them, get them out from underneath the rule of the Roman Empire. Um, and they thought this Jesus guy, man, was that. He was doing these signs, doing these wonders. And here he comes into Jerusalem in what we recognize today as Palm Sunday. Uh, and you have these people shouting Hosanna and reaching out, right? And celebrating this man coming in only to less than a week later crucify him and shout that he basically is not the man that they thought he was, right? Now, I'm using an extreme example here because that is an extreme. It absolutely is an extreme of seeing one group of people seeing who you think this person should be. In this case, I'm talking his historical person, Jesus, and you have the reality. Well, the reality is, if you believe this, as I do as a Christian, you believe that Christ came, died, and was resurrected, and unfortunately, our unmet expectations at that time were superseded. Uh, Thankfully, whether you believe that story or understand that to be true is the point of this podcast. What I'm here to help you understand is to realize that we all have unmet expectations in ourselves and other people, and it can be challenging. And so, what's the purpose of the Intelligent Human Leadership podcast, right? If hopefully you've been listening, if you're following along this episode, we're episode 15, which I'm excited to continue on with you. You'll realize that the purpose of this podcast, and if you're just listening for the first time, is to help you be the most intelligent leader, most intelligent, most aware person around, leading yourself well and those around you. So, how do you handle unmet expectations, right? Because again, we all have them. Most likely, they're focused externally, but they can also be done internally, where we have unmet expectations for ourselves. And so, when we have this, there is turmoil, there is challenge, there is frustration, there is anxiousness, right? And well, it may not be going to the extreme of saying, "I'm thinking this person's gonna be the king and the ruler of my life and all those amazing things," and then you're like, "This guy is a complete letdown, and we're gonna crucify him, we're gonna take him down." That is an extreme, but the reality is we have these examples in our life where these unmet expectations creep in, and some of them maybe oftentimes much smaller than that, but others are larger. And I'll dial it in here for you in the sense of we focus here on the Intelligent Human Leadership podcast in leaders. We focus those that are in positions of power or influence. They've moved up in their career. They're looking to uh, help others, hopefully, being the intelligent leader to lead yourself and your teams, right? But even if you're not there, what I want to encourage you is to look at this. So I'll give you real world examples, right? I've served as a project manager on many, many projects. Do you think I felt and encountered unmet expectations? Absolutely. Challenges with clients as far as timelines, deliverables, right? Regulatory compliance, like, oh, I didn't expect that, or that changed, that law changed, or that there was something new that popped up, right? So what we thought was going to be one way actually was something else. And that can send you in a tailspin, if you will, if you're not careful, to where you can not, injure yourself or injure others in the way that you handle it, the way you react or hopefully respond, the way you can be uh, proactive versus reactive, right? And so there are a lot of challenges here that we can face in how we can effectively mitigate, address that. And I'll give you a throwback. You guys can go back and listen into a previous episode. I believe it was episode 7 about changing your story. It's related to that um, in how we handle it. Um, and I'll get more into it here as we go through the podcast, but I want to unpack this a little bit more with you. Um, as far as how we handle or recognize these unmet expectations. So externally, there's always these unmet expectations. So outside of ourselves, we're looking at things. And again, as a project manager, this is oftentimes where you're going to run into it, right? Or you're a group leader watching over a program, something comes up that you didn't anticipate. I was just working with a client this week. They had budgeted, they planned certain things to go a certain way, and now the prime contract they're working with is changing it or saying, "Hey, we need to do these things," and it's costing a lot of time and money to adjust. So it's like, there's ways we have to address this, but first it starts in our mind, and then we can start to talk a lot, tactical logistical things and how to address it. But I want you to recognize when unmet expectations come up, they are triggering or pressing on emotions, feelings, um, feelings potentially of betrayal, feelings of anger, feelings of anxiety, irritation. Um, Sometimes it may actually go the other way, which is not a bad thing, where you have unmet expectations, like you thought it was going to go this way, meaning, oh, a lower expectation and then actually exceeded that. And you're like, oh my goodness. Well, I was kind of experiencing, so it's actually not meeting what you expected, but in this case, it's actually a positive thing. So they can go other ways too. Unmet can be positive and negative. Most of the time it's negative because you're thinking you have a high level of standard or again, what you're thinking of, and somebody or someone comes underneath that or yourself, right? Um, for me, as a project manager, when I've let people down, when I have not managed a budget well, not managed resources well, uh, and then my superiors are looking at me and saying, What's happened? You've missed our expectation for you as a leader, as a project manager." And obviously that doesn't feel good, right? So you can beat yourself up about it. You can say, "Oh, woe is me," right? However, that doesn't typically solve the problem. It just kind of makes it worse, honestly, when you stew in it instead of like pivoting in it. And then we're going to talk a little bit how you can do that here later in the episode. So when we look at these external things that are going on, planning, we have change in schedule, budget, resources, right? People, technology changes, doesn't work the way we expected it to work, right? We're like, I thought this was going to work this way and it didn't. So we're faced with these unmet expectations. It starts to take an emotional and psychological toll on us when that continues to happen on a regular basis. The reality is we will have them on a regular basis. It may be different areas in our life. It may be in our work life. It may be in our marriage. It may be with our children. Um, and so if you don't understand that, the mounting stress, and I talked about managing stress in a previous episode early on in the podcast. Go back and check it out. But this stress is going to impact your health and well-being, your mental faculties, if you will, right? And then when you're facing that, how many of you know that this affects your team members, right? If you're processing this, sometimes you don't even have to say a word, and they know. They know by the body language, uh, by the tone of your voice, or the lack of interaction, even potentially, that you removed yourself or you kind of shut people off because of your frustration, anger, irritation, and then, or even unfortunately, even biting words and cutting words that do more harm than good. Um, so, getting yourself in a place in which you can process that, right? Have a tool or resources to help you get through that. Um, that is part of the reason why I created Steward Your Business and Steward Yourself program, is to help you get clear on your mental mindset. And this is where I work with individuals and companies to process this in a healthy way. It's not easy, honestly. It's something that takes practice, intentionality, and it's something you can certainly develop over time, as I have, but I wasn't always that way. And so when we have these continued unmet expectations, it does greatly affect our outlook on work and success. And what sometimes happens is we build these walls of stories of our unmet expectations. Stories that unfortunately don't serve us in the long run, but they can be used to kind of make us feel better about the situation. But honestly, it doesn't in the long run. I've had this where I've worked with others, and maybe you just experienced this yourself, where you did fail, you didn't meet an expectation, and it was an isolated incident, or it was something that, um, although maybe it was isolated, it was a big deal. Don't get me wrong. And the person on the other end of that, they had the expectations of you, and then it was like a hurdle went up. And if you guys are familiar with hurdles or in track, hurdles are these, you know, areas where you have to get over. Obviously, you keep running their ways. Well, if you keep raising the hurdle, or you add more hurdles because of, like, you're like, this person, they didn't meet my expectation. They let me down. They didn't work. It's challenging to overcome that. Even even if you're actually making progress, in the other person's mind, you have not met their expectations, and in some cases, unfortunately, you may never meet their expectations, and that's unfortunate, but that's the reality you have to face sometimes, is that you will not be able to overcome unmet expectations of others, because they look at that incident or the event, right? And this was a big one for me to understand this. Um, where can you find healing in that? Where can you find resolution in that? That has to come internally first, in my opinion. And then you have to forgive yourself. You have to understand where you're at and find a resolution in that gap of where you're at and to where you know you can be. And if you're stuck in that, beating yourself up, or getting stuck, your effectiveness will definitely decrease. And unfortunately, it's a sign of a fulfilling prophecy, where you will continue to not meet expectations. And so here on the Intelligent Human Leadership Podcast, I want to help you overcome that. I want to help you get on the other side of that. And that way you actually can meet or exceed expectations consistently over time, because you have a plan, you have tools, you have resources in order to do that. This is both the tools and the resources being applied, implemented, using your mind, renewing your mind, getting in a healthier place, being the healthiest leader in the room. right? So when we move in that direction, we are able to then positively affect those around us and deal with those unmet expectations. Um, as I was talking earlier, um, it's hard though. It's hard. So I was using the story of this Holy Week, this Easter time, right? And you had all these people that just couldn't believe that Jesus was this guy that was coming to die rather than live for everybody at the time. Living meaning literally live on earth as a human being versus live eternally is what he was coming for. And so there was just this misunderstanding of who he was and where he was at. And ultimately, it came around that the people, those followers of Christ, uh, recognized, oh my gosh, he exceeded our expectations of what we thought he was actually coming to do and who he was. But that took time. It didn't happen overnight. It did not happen right away for that mindset and understanding to come about. Now we have this history to look back at. We have this record we can see, and we can see where they have what how those individuals, disciples, and followers of Christ, how they did it, how they came to understand. They had real world. They literally saw him, but we don't have that luxury or ability to go back in time and see that. But we do have the ability here and to process our feelings, understand them. We have an amazing mind that I believe God gave us, our amazing bodies that we have here, and we can use them to become the most intelligent human leader. So, how do we do that? How do we become that intelligent human leader? Well, I want to introduce you to this idea or tool, if you will, that I use in my coaching program called the stack. The stack is a tool in that it helps you process your unmet expectations, meaning there's a story that you have, right? This person let me down. I scheduled a survey. They didn't follow through. They didn't communicate with me in the right time. I didn't get the right information back, which are facts, right? So we're dealing with facts, and we have to then deal with what's our desired reality that we want to have. We have to deal in truth. We have to deal in facts because if we don't deal with that, then we're kind of stuck. It's if you're not living in reality, there's not a lot we can do with you there. So I want to get grounded in reality and understand where we're at. So recognizing this was my expectation, it was not met. True or false? Yeah. Okay. True. It was not met. Right. So then the next part is once we can understand and break that down, we have associations of feelings, emotions, right? Oftentimes, I found as a man, we have difficulty identifying those feelings outside of maybe happy, sad, glad, mad, right? Um, I want you to go deeper. Um, and there's some great resources out there, but as far as identifying these emotions, and if you need help with that, again, reach out to me. I'll point you in the direction there of some different ones I use. But we want you to get practiced at using different terminology besides happy, sad, glad, mad. Are you irritated? Are you frustrated? Uh, are you just depressed? Are you annoyed? What are the emotions that you're facing right now, right? What's the story you're telling yourself in this expectation? What were you expecting? Why are you expecting it? And was it reasonable, unreasonable? This is all a dialogue that we go through in the Stack tool. This is the app I use called the Warrior app. It's one of the tools in the toolbox, and that I help leaders use and apply to go through this discovery process. What's amazing in this, as you do this, you'll come out on the other side able to deal with the unmet expectations and create a new desired story. So when you go through this stack is a series of questions and interactions where I literally open up my app on my phone, and I've done hundreds and hundreds of these and all different types, um, based on where you're at emotionally. So are you happy? Are you, with rage, anger, irritation? Um, are you sad? So it takes those high level ones I talked to you about and it starts to get more specific. You know, this is an opportunity for you to go dig a little deeper about where you're at and why you're feeling the things that you're feeling. It helps you move from victim to victor, from victim to victor. Victory is what I'm all about. I want you to be victorious in the way that you live and show up in life. And so, why I share this with you is, and why I have these podcasts week after week, is that you have a resource and that you know you're not alone. The tool of the stack is one that I go into great detail on. I can't do it right here, and I would love to show you, and I'll have it available to you. And I will be actually be doing some master classes coming up here. So follow along, message me, uh, and I'm happy to talk with you. I respond directly with everybody that interacts with the podcast. If you have a question, please do message me directly. But ultimately, what we can do is take this tool, and it's not the only tool, but it's a tool I know that's worked for me and thousands of men and women that I've used as a certified trainer with Wake Up Warrior, that I bring into my coaching. And so, what we're able to do is take this unmet expectation, break it down. What are the emotions? What's the story they're facing with this, right? And start to craft a new narrative of how can we do and address this going forward? What are the actions that we can take where we're at now dealing with the unmet expectations of cost overrun, you know, employees being non-responsive or ineffective to what we thought they should be, right? We can we could stew in that emotion or the anger, or the angst, or we can take that, leverage all of that emotion, taking that in the container, what I call the stack, and using that to push you forward in a positive way, lift up your team and get you the desired story where you're actually winning and overcoming the hurdle or the obstacle that you have faced with the unmet expectation. So I just want to leave you with this idea and this thought today. And I appreciate you guys listening to me as we kind of walked you through this story of an unmet expectation and bringing you back to where you can be the victor. Going through the story, identifying a new story, a new revelation, and saying, "How can I show up? How can I do this?" And taking that tool, and this is the other beauty of the stack tool that I love, that it's designed to be easily shared, if you so desire, with others on your team, anybody, from the lesson learned to the whole stack to just a portion of it, so that you can literally share your thought process. What's your experience going through this? And when we do the stack, and I've talked about this on past episodes, or if you guys follow with me on live, I talk about this too on my social platforms. But living by the code means we are real, we are raw, meaning we're stripping away the layers of how we're dealing with this unmet expectations and applying it relevantly to our lives so that we can truly get the results that we desire. Again, if we're not being a basis in truth, living in truth, we have to stop lying to ourselves or deceiving ourselves, but really understand, you know, what were our emotions, why did we want this? What was unmet in this? Is it reasonable, unreasonable? That was the whole process through the stack. And I can tell you it's liberating. It is amazing in how it can help you get clarity and move you in the positive direction. So I want to get you unstuck from unmet expectations. We all have them, both externally and internally. All right, we have our own on ourselves, and we look at the world and all the ones out there, right? Well, I'm telling you, you can come out on the winning side. You can be the victor throughout all of the unmet expectations you face, and know that it can help you for good in the long run, get you to where you truly want to be. If this is intriguing to you and you want to learn more, please reach out to me. This is an amazing tool, amazing resource that I've been using for years as part of the overall Warrior app suite. and I incorporate that as part of my coaching program. I do have openings and opportunities right now, and so they're not always going to be there, but right now I have them. And so if you're hearing this podcast, one of the things I'm offering, and I mentioned this in the last episode, so I'm going to bring it out again, is I have an amazing book, another resource in addition to the Stack tool. It's called the Communication Code, and that's another resource again that I offer. I have a free book for those that watch on YouTube. You can see the video here. That book is offered to you. Um, if you decide that you want to work with me, do a free discovery call, and then I'm happy to give that to you as a onboarding gift and appreciate your support. So I'm about giving value, helping you be the most intelligent leader. I appreciate you guys listening here. And for those of you, hopefully, when you hear this, we've just gone through Easter week and you're getting into the second quarter of 2024, if you can believe it. I'm recording this here in the last full week of March. And so I want to encourage you, have an amazing next quarter and in 2024. And if you need help, you know where to find me here, David Carr, your host of the Intelligent Human Leadership Podcast. I look forward to connecting with you again on our next episode. Go out there, have an amazing day, and know that you have a support and resource here with David Carr, the Intelligent Human Leadership Podcast of Steward Your Business. Thanks for listening.